Christmas movie review. I'm joined this week by my brother, AK2000, and we're visiting another Christmas classic within my own family with the two of us, with National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. We've watched this every year together for as long as I can remember. We've really enjoyed this movie, so we decided that, for the first movie review we do together, we would go over this one. And in this, Chevy Chase plays Clark Griswold as he tries to put together the perfect Christmas for his family, with his children, with his mother's parents, with his parents, and try and just make the best Christmas that they can all experience as a family together, and all of the hilarity and craziness that ensues from that. So, what did you think about this movie watching it again this year?
Well, I mean, of course, I've always considered it probably the funniest movie I've ever seen, and quite possibly the funniest, maybe not funniest, but the greatest comedy of all time.
Okay.
Um, because sure, you can find a comedy that has higher laughs per minute, where maybe you're laughing more often because there are a lot of slow scenes in this movie. But I think if you're going to look at the quality of the comedy, where it's not just about laughing at dumb things just because it's dumb, but it's about the high quality storytelling mixed with the masterful writing by John Hughes. And then on top of that, Chevy Chase's amazing comedy. This quite possibly is the greatest comedy of all time.
Yes, I would agree, but I would also disagree with some parts because one of the notes I wrote down, maybe only halfway through the movie, was that every scene is a joke. Whether the scene is a joke or they put a joke in the scene or Chevy Chase is just being funny. Every
Uh,
scene is a joke. And I don't even know, like, there are just so few serious moments in the movie. Every scene was making me laugh. I was either laughing at the beginning of the scene and the scene opened with something funny, or the scene was ending with something funny every time.
well, definitely one thing that I made put down to make sure to mention, and we can talk about more of the specific jokes later on.
Yeah.
But I feel like this movie definitely encapsulates and shows. Um, I wouldn't even say just Chevy Chase, but also because this movie was written by John Hughes, of course.
Yep.
But then,
Oh, I have notes about that.
yeah, so of course John Hughes writing, but then Chevy Chase being able to take that writing and put his own comedy into it.
Yeah.
Every single scene is able to translate a type of joke that just couldn't exist without that pair, without that writing and that acting pair going together.
And
And
every
that's
joke
specifically
was
what I'm proud
different.
of.
Every joke was different. It wasn't the same joke over and over. Um, there were a couple. Well, I guess there were a couple times where they make the same joke over and over, but it was within that one scene. And the
Mm-hmm.
joke was they're repeating the same thing multiple times, and it's not repeated again in the rest of the movie. Other movies will take one joke and say that same joke 4 or 5 times throughout the movie. This one might do it 4 or 5 times in that one scene and then abandon it. They made the joke, they finished the joke. New types of comedy are used. It's not the same. They might use physical comedy in one scene, but wordplay in another.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, definitely, definitely. But as we go through the movie, we can talk about each scene and what jokes are specifically the standout jokes of the film.
Yes. Um, early on in the movie, um, I feel like so many Christmas movies have the exact same joke, and it's that the Christmas tree is too big. So many movies make that make that same joke of this is going to be the perfect tree, and then it's scratching the ceiling. It's too big, it's too wide. All I just feel like so many Christmas movies have that joke, and yes, it's funny, but when you watch Christmas movies, you watch them between Thanksgiving and Christmas. You have a 1 month time period of watching your Christmas movies. And there's 30, 40, however many movies you're going to watch, you're going to fit in that one window and you're going to see that same joke over and over. Played the same way. And
Mm-hmm.
I just thought, it's funny, but it's just something I thought of was like over and over, same joke. Um, Another thing that I loved with the grandparents, with the same thing of, like you said, it takes the writing from John Hughes, but the presentation and delivery from the actors, like the grandparents are hilarious. Um, like the lights aren't working. He gets everyone out to the house and the lights don't work. And I believe
I
one of
feel
the
like I feel like especially with this movie is you can, especially once you've seen it so many times, you can start really to view it as a parody of Christmas movies if you really
sure,
think about it. Because like you said at first with the tree, is that's a corny joke about trying to the tree size or get the tree to work in the house, or but this movie, it doesn't just do that joke. It does that joke, and to show that we're not just being corny doing that same joke, it parodies that joke by having the tree be a different size in almost every single scene it's in. If you watch the movie, the tree is, I think maybe once or twice, like two consecutive scenes, it's the same tree, but the tree is not the same tree throughout the movie.
really,
They
because
intentionally changed the model of the tree to parody the fact that they made the joke about the tree,
and that's before the tree
or the tree
burns
burns
down.
up and they have to get
So
a new
it
tree.
is the same tree, but they've been changing
But
it
but
out with
but
different
yes,
sizes.
it changes sizes and designs completely
Oh,
throughout the entire
no,
movie
I did
to
not.
make
I don't remember
fun of
noticing
street
that.
jokes. Yes.
Oh, that's great. That is really great.
So the movie is kind of, it'll do the stereotypical joke, but it will do it in a way that's never been done before.
Sure. Okay. But like just like the line delivery. Two specific scenes with the line delivery. I mean, Russ mentions it's not going to fit in our it wouldn't even fit in our yard. Just this, the yard is bigger than the living room. This tree will not even fit in our front yard. And
Not going in our yard less,
Clark,
it's going in our living room.
without even thinking, he does. It's just such perfect
That's
delivery.
the masterful delivery by Chevy Chase.
Dad, that thing wouldn't fit in our yard.
Not going in our yard, Russ. It's going in our living room.
Perfect delivery. And then just, a little while later, they're out in the yard, the lights aren't working. Grandma says something, and Audrey, claps back with, he worked really hard on that. And
So do
then,
washing.
and so do washing machines.
He worked really hard, Grandma.
So do washing machines.
It would be so easy to make this whole movie review just quoting lines from the movie because, yes, masterful writing, masterful delivery. It's great. Um, because it feels so much like just repeating ourselves because every scene is like that. Every scene is just perfect with just Chevy Chase just standing there either acting goofy or just acting so oblivious. And
And
he plays it off so well.
like one shot that really stuck out to me in the more recent times I've seen this movie, that in my opinion shows the way they thought about not just the way the jokes are written down, because so many comedies nowadays, you a blind person could watch and get all the jokes. It is
Yep.
simply, let's write down funny jokes, have the actors stand up and recite it, and there's the jokes. Whereas this movie requires a careful attention to detail in what you're watching, hearing, viewing, which of course gives it the gift of multiple of repeat viewings, which a Christmas movie needs, because Christmas movies are made to be rewatched, not
Yep.
watched first time and never watched again.
Yeah.
So with all of these visual gags that can be easily lost to the sidelines, you'll be continuing to pick up new jokes that either you missed or you just forgot about every single time you watch the movie.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest ones that stuck out to me is in the scene when Clark is looking through the window, imagining the hot department store lady in his
Okay.
pool.
Okay.
And, at first you think just the joke is, at first he imagines his family swimming in the pool. And then he's like, no, screw that. I'm going to imagine the hot department store lady swimming in my pool. So
Okay.
that's the surface level joke. But then you start to pick up on every time it cuts back to Clark's face, you see him through the window. The window's covered in ice, and it's still in snow in Cleveland. And so every shot to reverse shot is you see the summer, then you see the winter. And then what just killed me was absolutely hilarious. When she throws her bathing suit at him, it cuts back to him, and you see it hit the frozen window, and you see her bathing suit hit the frozen window. And that was the joke of the scene, that you saw the real clothes in the real world for a minute. It
Okay. Yeah.
exited the visual fantasy
Yeah.
and it hit the window. And if you need to see that shot, watch again. It's so funny when you actually pick up on the little visual details that aren't shoved in your face as if like this is the joke of the scene. There's two or three jokes, and each one's a little bit farther down.
Yeah. No, I remember noticing that. I never really picked up on it as if it's a joke, but yeah, it's a juxtaposition of, he's in Fantasyland. We're seeing the fantasy, but then we see the fantasy cross over into the reality of the snow-covered house.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I didn't really think of it that way, but yes.
And then, of
Um,
course, the biggest visual joke that you can miss in the whole movie, or even not miss, it's kind of obvious, but it's hilarious. If you're just listening to them talk in when they're in Walmart, Russ and Clark,
oh man,
and
yes. No, no, it wasn't Russ. It was Cousin Eddie.
sorry, Russ, cousin Eddie,
Yep.
and Clark. Clark's pushing the cart, and of course, the context of the scene. So, first of all, you have to think of how many layers this scene goes down. The context of the scene is that cousin Eddie is broke and has no money. Okay, that's the
Yes,
context of the
that is the context.
Clark is going to confront him about paying for Christmas for his children because he has no money.
Eddie?
Well, I can't complain. How you doing?
Not that good, actually.
Your company kill off all them people over in India not long ago?
No. You missed out on that one. You're pretty set so far as shopping goes?
Well, I can't lie to you, Clark. Truth is, things ain't going too good at all. You know, I told you I borrowed the RV from my neighbor. It's mine. We live in it. Had to sell off the house, the barn, the 10 acres. All I kept was a 50-foot plot, the pigs, and the worm farm. If only I had back the money that me and Catherine sent that TV preacher that was screwing the hockey players.
So while Clark is grocery shopping, Eddie grabs 5 or 6 or 7 like 30-pound bags of dog food and continues to pile them into the cart. Of course, when he's broken, has no money, he's buying months worth of dog food instead of food for his family, which is the first joke.
First joke, yes.
The second joke is that Clark is buying light bulbs, puts them on top of the dog food, and then Eddie just throws the dog food on top and smashes them.
Immediately smashes them.
And of course, because that's supposed to be a second layer joke, it's not the joke of the scene. So they can't have the characters acknowledge that, because then that makes it the joke of the scene.
Yeah.
So they don't even acknowledge it. If you turn away or you're not paying attention, you miss it, and Clark misses it. That's also part of the joke.
Yes.
So now you have extra jokes on top of the side joke that just all add up to make it funnier.
Then you have the second layer, but then the third layer is after Clark has offered, we'll buy some gifts for the kids. We will provide some Christmas, because you have no money.
Yes.
Because you have no money, we will provide some gifts for the children.
And so, of course, Eddie has to tell him, while you're doing that, I hope you get yourself something real nice.
No. Well, technically, but he says, I will get you something.
I'll get you
real nice. Because of your gift to me, since I have no money, I will buy you something really nice. It's like, you have no money. How are you going to get him something real nice?
Yes. But
that's why he's offering this.
What makes it funny is the non-acknowledgement by the characters, which again goes into the masterful writing. Because nowadays, so many comedies are ruined by improv. And you notice I was watching this in another, like, if you just want me to give an example. This has nothing to do with this, but I was watching Pitch Perfect the other week.
Okay.
And I watched Pitch Perfect 1, which is really good, Pitch Perfect 2, which is a bit worse. And you can notice in the first act of Pitch Perfect 2, the writing's not that strong. It's definitely not as good as the first one. It's kind of slagging behind. It's not nearly as funny. So then you know what they do? They hire Keegan-Michael Key to come into a scene and he's
in the second one?
Yes. Okay. And he's in just a few scenes, but they hire him to come into a scene, and you can tell they just put him in the room with all these characters and just had him go off for a whole day and then cut down his best little bits to 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's because they didn't have the writing talent to actually write a funny scene, so they just hire a funny comedian, come in, give me some stuff, and I'll see what I can find. But this movie has none of that. Or if we're being honest, no movies from the 90s, 80s, 70s had that, because they had writing.
Yeah. They had good writing. They had good writers.
And you see, you don't get those little visual gags when you do improv. You
Yeah.
don't get the intelligent layers on top of layers when you do improv.
Well, I mean, Robin Williams could pull that off all day, every day, and he did. It
But that was
see,
because that was his thing. It wasn't.
yeah, I
Robin
would
Williams
agree. I would agree,
created the
but like
format.
Aladdin,
Robin Williams created the format of filming improv for the movie.
yes. Now Aladdin did not win best script that
Mm-hmm.
year because Robin Williams ad-libbed almost all of his lines. Almost the entire movie. It was going to win best script
Until they realized it wasn't the
until
script that
they
made it.
realized he like even if it was the script, it still might have won best script, but he ad-libbed so many of his lines they couldn't give it best script because it wasn't pre-planned. It wasn't the script that was being awarded. It would have been the movie. Um so like it is possible, but it takes so much talent, and it takes talent that is planned to be that way. Like that. Um just a couple more things about the movie, and then I'm going to jump into the behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
When he's in the attic, the attic is such an amazing scene. Um, but he finds the old present from Mother's Day
Yes.
from 1983. So I looked up to see what is the setting of when this movie came out, and this movie was released in 1989, which means the present would have been there for 6 years. Because I always wondered, every year we watch it, I always wonder how long has the present been out there? We see the
Yeah.
year of when it was stuffed in there, but when did the movie come out? So
Because of
1989.
course, putting the presents in the attic isn't enough. The attic that nobody ever goes into. You
Yeah,
have to shove them into the boards of the house, down the far end of the attic.
that you can't even see inside of, which is
Yes.
how he lost the present.
Which is how he lost the first present. Yet he
Um,
continues to stuff the gifts farther down.
he still does it. He still does it. As he sees evidence that he
Mm-hmm.
lost this present for 6 years,
Mm-hmm.
he continues doing that. Um, my wife noticed while we were watching it that when Clark is sliding down the mountain on the sled, there are two, maybe three scenes that you can see the wire that is pulling him down. It's the scenes are very quick, anyways, but they're slightly in there, and you can see the wire that's pulling him. So that was a thing that she got really excited when she noticed that.
That's cool.
Let's see, and then for behind the scenes, do you have any behind the scenes that you know of this movie before I start naming them off in case I would end up taking any from you?
Um, I'm honestly not sure. I know for sure, obviously, over the years, I've heard things and read things,
Yeah.
but nothing that's been like so standoutish that I'm like, that's something I'm gonna dedicate to my memory to just have in my head.
Yeah. So I will start off with John Hughes, and then John Hughes was producer, I believe, also writer for this movie. Go ahead and name off a couple John Hughes movies because I know you really like him. You can make,
Well,
and then
of
go
course.
ahead and add on to some of your favorite things about him because he is legendary for movies from the 80s.
Well, of course, I just watched Sean. Well, of course, we watched Crucifixion, which inspired us to watch John Hughes's magnum opus, The Breakfast Club, last week.
Sure.
Which is of course flawless. But of course, you have his 16 Candles, Pretty in Pink, Weird Science, Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yep.
And of course, it might be all, but I'm not going to say all just 'cause I don't know for sure. But almost all of John Hughes' movies takes place in or right around Chicago.
Okay.
That was his hometown, and that's of course this movie takes place right outside Chicago. You see Clark Griswold wearing a Chicago Bears hat throughout the movie. And of course, Ferris Bueller's Day Off is considered his love letter to Chicago because he loves the city so much. Ferris Bueller goes and has the best day ever in Chicago.
Yeah.
Of course, John Hughes, I believe he passed away 2010 to 2012, somewhere in that time frame. But he was genuinely considered one of the greatest scriptwriters of that time. I mean, I know there's a story of him. He cranked out the Home Alone script. I know it was for sure in under a week. It might have been like 2 or 3 days.
Wow. For the first two?
As far as
That's
that's
the first one.
just the first one. But he wrote that entire first script in at least less than a week. But that was how he wrote scripts. Is he got an inspiration and then he wrote a flawless script. And that's not like a first week for the first draft. That is a next to final cut of the draft that they are going to ship.
Wow. Let's see. So John Hughes produced the movie. Now, when working on this movie, he wanted to bring on Chris Columbus to
Mhm.
direct the movie. And before they ever even got close to filming, Columbus came to the realization that he could not work with Chevy Chase.
Yeah.
After meeting him, Chevy Chase is a notoriously difficult actor to work with. It is. There are many stories about it between Community. I believe it's well documented within the Community cast. And so while watching this movie, I wondered, when did that kind of start coming up of him being difficult to work with? Did it just happen because of getting into old age, or has it always been that way? And I guess at least back in '89, it was. And so even though he desperately needed a job at that point in his career, Columbus decided to quit the project. And then John Hughes brought him in to direct Home Alone. And Chris
Yeah.
Columbus, again, good. I'm guessing just ended up being really good friends with John Hughes. He directed Home Alone. He directed the first two Harry Potter movies. He directed Christmas with the Cranks. Chris Columbus again is another one of those. If it is a classic children's movie for people our age, a little bit older than us, maybe sometimes a little bit younger than us, Chris Columbus and John Hughes probably had their hands in the project in some way. Um, so again, for anyone who's counting, this is also the third movie review I am making a Harry Potter connection to the movie.
All
Um,
right. Yeah.
and finally, John Hughes wrote this movie. He also had a hand in making all of the Christmas Vacation or all of the vacation movies. But he also wrote the original short story for, and it was I believe for the Vacation comic series or short stories that all of these are based off of. He wrote the original short story titled Christmas 59. And so when he's in the attic, when Clark is in the attic and he's looking at the movie reels, the tape on one of them says Christmas 59. And then when he starts up the movie, it says Christmas 55 and it's set in 1955. But that was his little reference to the original short
Okay.
story, as well as he was the original writer for the original story and then was able to write the movie based on that. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And to wrap it up, I guess what is kind of your short little, final thoughts on this?
I mean, like, final thoughts for this could go on forever, but I mean, like, just to talk about final thoughts for this movie is I think for one idea I also had I wanted to put in here was I don't want to say refreshing because of course this movie's old, so it's not like it came out today and it's like, oh, look what it's doing to change what we've been going
Yep.
through. But I feel like it's also a great statement that this movie doesn't have Santa Claus in it, in the sense that almost all Christmas movies find a way to put a little nudge, nudge, wink, wink, Santa's real at the very end.
Yeah.
Like the one that always comes to mind is Christmas with the Cranks. The movie seems to be like just, adults don't want to do Christmas and it's just a whole community thing and it's all real life. But then in the very final scene, turns out this old guy that's been periodic the whole movie, he's the real Santa Claus and he flies off at the end. It's like, okay, haha, that's cute. But this movie doesn't do any of that. It's the story's about the family. It's not necessarily about Christmas. It's about the family.
Yeah, I mean, it never even gets to Christmas Day. The movie
Exactly. The movie ends on
ends at
Christmas
the end
Eve.
of Christmas Eve.
Exactly. And so I love that this movie wasn't at no point tried to do the make it a wholesome family magical Christmas. Now, of course, it ends positively. Clark completes the Christmas and he gives his family the good Christmas, but it doesn't try and make it a look, kids, there's Santa Claus, which
Yeah.
of course that's more of a modern thing, trying to corporatize a movie and finally stick something for everybody in a movie.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's just wonderful in the way that it from start to finish. There's every scene doesn't not just every scene's funny, but every scene has such a outlandish, hilarious joke that if you just wrote a list of the funny jokes in the movie from the start of the film to the end of just absolute hilarious jokes you can't
You
get
would have
over,
written the
you
script.
would have a list. Yeah, exactly. You would have a list of every scene in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, you would
And,
at that point you would have just written the entire script of writing every
exactly.
joke from the movie. It's a beautiful movie. It's
And on top
funny.
of the
It's
movie,
got good music.
on top of being perfectly paced, it's not just perfectly paced story wise, it's perfectly paced comedy wise. Because Chevy Chase is a way to deliver every joke in a Chevy Chase way, but it never becomes repetitive. It never
Yeah,
becomes, oh, he's doing the Chevy Chase routine.
yeah.
It's never a routine, it's genuine.
Oh yeah, it always felt genuine that he didn't know what was going on. That
Yeah.
he was actually fighting with his arm stapled to the roof and then pulled him, like everything
Yeah.
was believable. Everything, felt yeah, genuine.
And
Hilarious movie.
on top of that believability part, it wasn't it a lot of again, a lot of this talk is what movies are like nowadays to what a good quality movie used to be. But I would say I won't even say nowadays, but just like you would think a scene like him stapling he continues to staple his hand, his shirt sleeve to the roof scene would be cartoonishly overplayed or outrageous. But the way he plays Clark Griswold, you really it's completely believable that this character is this dumb and doing something this stupid. It's not even like, oh, sure, he staples himself to the roof and then falls off and then all these crazy things. He doesn't even do it in a cartoonish way. He does it in a Clark Griswold way that makes
Yeah,
sense in the
yeah.
real world context of this movie.
Oh yeah. Um, I would agree with that. It's really the actor who sold the believability of the absurdity of the situation.
Mhm.
And final thoughts for myself, I would say it's one of the best movies to watch at Christmas time every year. The, I mean, it feels like I'm just gonna start repeating myself with just perfect pacing, perfect comedy, changing what the type of joke up is every time between physical, um, behind the scene, like below the surface comedy, above the surface comedy, audible, word play, things that you won't pick up on the first time, things that you will pick up after five, six, seven watch throughs. Um, One thing that I always feel is funny after earlier this year I watched all of the vacation movies. Clark and his wife are always the same actor, but they always switch out the children actors. They're always
Yeah,
different. And the two that play the children in this movie, I just think they do a great job. I think that they kind of did the best out of all the
yes,
different children actors
it's
throughout all of
absolutely
them. So like I'm glad that this movie, the one that you're most likely going to rewatch every year, has the best performance from the kids, chose the best uh,
mhm.
representation or people to represent the kids in this movie. And it's I just sat down, today watching it, and I was just smiling the whole time. I was just happy the whole time, enjoying it, laughing at every scene. So if you haven't seen the movie, go watch it. It's on HBO Max. Um,
Absolutely.
go watch the movie if you haven't seen it before. If you have and you haven't seen it this year or this season, go watch it again. Sit down, rewatch it, enjoy the movie, have fun with it. Um, Pay attention and see if there's something that we didn't mention that you picked up on. Um, if it's something that you hadn't picked up on before and noticed it, let us know down below. Your thoughts on this movie. If you hadn't seen it before, if you have, and enjoy the Christmas season. Let
Yeah,
this be, if you haven't already, let this be the first movie kind of get you into the Christmas feeling because. I mean, for myself, it's not Christmas until I see Hans Gruber fall off Nakatomi
well, that's
Plaza.
coming.
But I know for our dad, it's not Christmas until he hears Clark Griswold say, "I did it."
I did.
So, you know, if this is not your favorite Christmas movie, let us know down below. What is your favorite Christmas movie? And if it is, let us know your favorite parts. I would
And if it's not
say
your favorite Christmas movie, it should be.
it's. I'm not sure. I still have to figure out, what is my favorite. It's so hard, watching Die Hard. I would say Die Hard was my favorite. You
Mhm.
saw a bit about that discussion and back and forth with me and Logan whenever I said Die Hard was my favorite, but then he got me to re-question that. It's almost, it's so fun watching Christmas movies, and it's a different experience than any other movie. Um, well, AK2000, we'll try and get you back here again as we do more gaming videos and different things like that. I'm sure I'll get you on those. Um,
Absolutely.
I know you don't have a channel, so if y'all enjoyed having him here today to give his thoughts and views on the movie, comment down below. Let us know what you thought about my brother joining us today, and another Christmas movie you would like to see us talk about in the future. Y'all have a great day, and I will see you next time.